everybody. Welcome to InPsight Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. Hi, guys. I sure hope your Thanksgiving was incredible. Oh, mine was so great, you guys. I cooked this turkey, and it was about 18 pounds, right? And it came out ridiculously good. Now, I have to say, I am an obsessive baster. I just stand there and baste and baste and baste. That's what I do. It was so much fun, you guys. I had so much fun. And of course, my wife, Rebecca, and myself, we had over her parents, had my in-laws over and my sisters-in-law and one of my nephew came over. It was really, really amazing. So I hope that this holiday, you guys have had a chance to actually, just square off with each other and have beautiful conversation and some family time. And I apologize for being so stuffed up on the air today, you guys. I am trying to kick a cold that I've had for like 3 weeks. This is just so weird. So I still sound like I'm breathing through a cheesecloth here. But I am glad to have this time with you, you guys. And I'm going through some notes here about our podcast today. And can you believe it is this far at the end of November already? I really can't. I'm a little bit shocked. It's been quite a November. And a lot of different activities have been happening. I mean, there's been a lot of UFO sightings here in Montana. As a matter of fact, I took a video of one of the UFOs in a grocery store parking lot here in Billings, Montana at the Town and Country. That's right. And I walked right out, you guys, and I look up and here is this craft. And I mean, it is just cutting across the sky. It's amazing. And I'm looking at it thinking, oh my God, why isn't anybody else looking at this? And people oftentimes when they see a very, very bright low orb in the sky, they say things like, oh, congratulations, you found the International Space Station. And you guys, this was not the ISS. God bless the ISS. I have an app that tracks the ISS. That's right. It's very easy to do. You get them free. So this was not the ISS, you guys. It was so low hanging. It was so low churning. As a matter of fact, it was below airline contrails. So this giant, huge silver orb that's trucking across the sky, and it's trucking across at dusk time. I mean, the sun hadn't already gone down yet, but it had gone down enough, but it wasn't dark outside. And this giant orb is underneath of an airline contrail. So that's like 36,000 feet on average, right? This thing is well below the airline contrail. It's also not going to be a weather balloon because, weather balloons can be that low, but generally they are not in the flight path of airplanes. They're way high. They're like at 60,000 feet, generally. They're way up there. So when the infamous China spy balloon came flying over Montana, and I was out there looking at that thing, it wasn't moving. It was just sitting there. It was just sitting up there glowing. And that was the other thing that tipped me off, that it probably wasn't a spy balloon. But not to say we didn't have a spy balloon that cut across Montana, because clearly we did. But this was a whole different deal. It was just weird. It was weird. This orb that I recently saw in the sky. So, of course, I'm standing out there, you guys, in the parking lot of the Town and Country. And I'm whipping my phone out and people are just walking by me. It's Montana. They're probably like, oh, she found an eagle or a goose up there. So I'm taking this video and I'm narrating this video in the parking lot as people are walking by me. And not one person that walked by me that heard me talking at the top of my lungs about, oh my God, look at this thing. It's a UFO. Look at this UAP. It's below the cloud line. Look at it trucking along there. That's clearly not a satellite. It's lower than everything. It's not the space station. Not one person looked up. Not one person. And honestly, I was probably, you guys, it was dinner time. So I was probably passed by half a dozen people. So today's podcast, and I've been looking so forward to this. Today's podcast is all about UAPs and the planet they rode in on, because I am getting an incredible amount of you who are emailing me and texting me and inboxing me on social, and you're asking me about these UAPs that you are seeing. I'm having people write from Kansas. I'm having people write from Wisconsin. I'm having people write from down south in Missouri. People are seeing UAPs all over the place. And UAP, you guys, is the new term for UFO, and it's unidentified aerial phenomenon. And the reason they changed that from unidentified flying object is because some of these things that people see in the air are floating. We don't know if they're flying or they're light anomalies, and they move in a really weird way. So unidentified aerial phenomenon, okay? So these UAPs are all over lately, and I'm getting so many questions from you guys about what's going on with that. Because if you'll recall, fairly recently, just a couple of months ago, at the end of July of 2023, guys, we had, remember, huge congressional UAP or UFO hearings. And former military officials made just a list and a series of all kinds of documented procedures, craft, bodies of our off-world cousins. I mean, all kinds of things. They spilled the beans, these military officials, and they were under oath. And this was for a congressional hearing, okay? And it was the House Oversight Subcommittee, actually, that held the hearing on UFOs. And now they're called UAPs, right? But honestly, the most surprising thing about this is that I've been waiting for the news outlets or even our government to follow this up with something. And there really hasn't been a whole lot of follow-up, even though these former military folks, you guys, claimed that they had non-human intelligence and bodies of non-human matter, meaning, biological matter, that the United States government had. And these are all former military folks sworn under testimony. And I mean, I think NBC, ABC, CBS, everybody reported on it. And it kind of came and it kind of went. Even though, and I think his name is pronounced Grush, you guys, but David Grush, a former U.S. Intelligence official, okay, he told the panel that he's positive, he's absolutely certain that our federal government is in possession of UAPs and UFOs. And he said he conducted all of these different interviews with 40 witnesses over like a 4-year period, I believe it was. So he's got all these witnesses. He says the government knows this is there. They have bodies, they have alien bodies, they have UFO parts, the whole 9 yards. And, honestly, the cliff notes on this, of course, are that a lot of the reps that were in this subcommittee, the representatives, were asking David Grush, they were saying, hey, how is this possible that the United States government is funding a military and we have absolutely no idea that this is happening, that our government has UAP technology, that they're reverse engineering, and that we have, alien bodies on ice. I mean, it sounds like a 1970s really bad skate show. Honestly, so they're all asking, how is this possible? Because, this money would have to come from somewhere to organize all of these UAP bits that have been found, right? So Grush claimed that the effort was above congressional oversight. That is a quote. He said, well, you don't know about this because it's above your pay grade, bucko. That's literally what they told this representative. And basically that it was paid for by misappropriated funds. Now, we know, those of us that are in the ufology community and study UAPs, we know, thanks to folks like Dr. Stephen Greer, who was a whistleblower before whistleblowers were cool. You go, Dr. Greer. There's been a lot to discredit that poor guy, and it's a shame because he's actually quite on the cutting edge of what he's been doing. But anyway, when he came out with all of this information, all right, he had information back then that showed that we were taking tax dollars through our military budget and siphoning off not millions, not hundreds of millions, but billions of dollars, and putting them into black book projects that nobody knew about. And there was a whole list of them. And I know I've told this story before on this podcast, but one of the Joint Chiefs, I believe it was an admiral, got he got a hold of this list. So he's looking down and there's billions of dollars going into, these weird projects with weird names like Project Tootsie Roll, Project Left Eyeball, whatever. And this admiral had no idea what this was referring to at all. So, of course, the admiral is like, what is going on? And so he calls up the Pentagon. And he's like, yeah, I just got this budget thing and there's a bunch, like billions of dollars in secret projects that nope, I didn't authorize this. I mean, what the heck is this? Can you tell me what these projects are? And the Pentagon told one of our joint chiefs, our highest ranking military officials in the United States of America. They said, sir, I'm sorry, you do not have the clearance for this. So, I mean, we've known for a long time that there's misappropriated funds, right? So I'm thinking back to this interview that was done with David Grush and how fun, and I might be pronouncing his name, you guys, but that's what I've been calling him. So sorry, sir, if your name is absolutely wrong. But I thought it was so funny because it was this rep from Florida that just was gobsmacked. He couldn't believe that, well, what do you mean? We don't know about misappropriated funds. We don't know where is this all coming from. So the crap really, really hit the fan when this oversight committee took over. And so basically it was Representative, I should name him, Jared Moskowitz, who is a Democrat out of Florida, who asked about the funding. And at that time, obviously, Mr. Grush answered how he answered. And the guy, our representative, Jared here, is quoted as saying, does that mean there is money in the budget that is set up to go to a program, but it doesn't, and it goes to something else? And David Grush says, yes, I have specific knowledge of that. He didn't provide more details after that. But, I mean, the interesting part about this is David Grush actually said, look, I've never seen a UFO. I've never personally seen a UAP, okay? But he talked about multiple colleagues he had that were actually physically injured by UAPs. And he said that he also interviewed a lot of folks who have recovered non-human biologics, bodies, pieces of arms, legs, eyeballs, alien, from crashed UAPs. So this is hitting mainstream news, you guys, back at the end of July. Now I'm setting something up here, which is why I'm going back in time with you. Can you believe this? This is like we're finding alien body parts, and there is a former military person who is in intelligence sworn in front of our American Congress talking about this, okay? And the most hysterical thing is David Grush said that he prefers to use the term non-human rather than alien or extraterrestrial. Non-human. Okay, well, I'll call them our off-world cousins. So we all have our little terms. Anyway, going on, there was a Representative Eric Burlinson, who is a Republican out of Missouri, and he asked David Grush to substantiate the crashed UAP's claim. And when he did that, David Grush, who's the former intelligence official, said he could not divulge specific details. Once again, he said that it was too sensitive to share with the public. And he did say, I have to, and this is a quote, I have to be very careful here, but what I personally witnessed myself and my wife was very disturbing. So he couldn't talk about what he saw or what was going on, but clearly it's extraterrestrial or ET-ish or off-world-ish in nature. And it goes on. And I mean, honestly, you can look all this stuff up online. But I'm setting the scene here because at the time of this inquiry, we barely heard about it on the news. I mean, it was in the newspaper and it was online, but news programs, I think they reported on it like one night and then it was gone. And I found this so shocking. So take this back to the fact that here I am in this parking lot and I'm talking at the top of my lungs saying, wow, look at this UAP. There's a UFO. It's low flying. Wow, it's right there. It's headed to Shepherd. There it goes. And not one person looked. Isn't that interesting? And I thought to myself, do they not want to look? Do they not want to look like a weirdo if they look over to see what the weirdo lady is filming? And then I thought to myself, are they just so burnt out about seeing UAPs in the sky here in Montana? And we see UFOs in the sky all the time here, you guys. It is no big deal. So maybe they thought, yeah, you're seeing a UFO. They're everywhere. Who cares? We see these all the time, and just kept going. I don't know. My psychic sense, my spiritual sense, my intuitive sense was that there was just a really deep impression here that they didn't want to get involved. And when I think about the lack of reporting in the news about this congressional hearing with officers and with former intelligence officials sworn under oath to Congress, I mean, it was a little weird. And I thought, man, are people just overloaded? Are people just overloaded with our everyday crap? And the fact that a loaf of bread is now $7, no kidding. I mean, is this where people are at? Can they not handle it? So back then, there was going back to late July with this congressional oversight hearing. We go back to Representative Virginia Foxx, who's a Republican from North Carolina, who was basically doubling down on the calls of all of her constituents and all of her fellow folks on this committee for more transparency. And really, this is one of the very few times that we've had a really bipartisan effort in our modern Congress to get to the bottom of something. And to be quite honest with you, it would not surprise me at all if our more, consumer subsidized media outlets did not report more on this, because there was a pretty unified front between Democrats and Republicans calling for more transparency here. I mean, everybody was on the same page. I think it was the only time I've ever seen like Marco Rubio and a bunch of Democrats just sitting there going, I know this is so weird. We got to do something about this, because it was bigger than us. It's bigger than Earth. And maybe that's why the news didn't report on it, you guys. I mean, there's not a lot of sparks flying there. Everybody's agreeing that the United States government needs to cough it up, right? Lots of bipartisan support for this. So anyway, Representative Virginia Foxx, she basically doubled down on her fellow representatives' calls for more transparency, And she actually brought up that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who's the director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. Say that 10 times real fast. I'm going to say it again. Sean Kirkpatrick is the director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. All-Domain Anomaly Resolution. So you call like what you see at Chupacabra, you call up Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, you find a vampire, you run across, I don't know, a skinwalker, call up Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. He's the director of the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. I want that job. I want the job of Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. I want to be the head of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. How freaking great would that be? You'd be in the middle of all the things. Oh, it'd be so cool. Interdimensional beings. That would be a great job. Anyway, Representative Virginia Foxx picked on Dr. Sean here and basically said that this guy, Dr. Sean, had previously told the Congress that there was no credible evidence of extraterrestrial life. And David Grush objected to Kirkpatrick's claim, obviously. And that made this Representative Virginia Foxx say that, quote, contradiction is a perfect example of why we need to inject transparency into our government. This coming from Republican Representative Virginia Foxx from North Carolina. This cry from Representative Foxx was unanimously agreed upon by this entire subcommittee, right? So, I mean, they talked about in this whole big entire meeting, they talked about why haven't more military people come forward? And, the military officials were saying, well, we get tired of people thinking we're crackpots, and Navy pilots and Air Force pilots don't want to lose their standing. And we get told to shut up all the time. And we're just trying to feed our families, you guys, because this is such a taboo subject, right? And I mean, Graves, there's a gentleman who came up and was talking about, one of the folks up there who was talking, who were sworn in to talk about these anomalies, told the panel that stigma silences pilots who fear professional repercussions, which he said is compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Now, I think that's a really important portion here, guys, because those of us who have been doing this work for a long time have been watching the government discredit folks who came out with big UAP discoveries and big UAP evidential packages. And this isn't conspiracy, you guys. This is all mainstream stuff. We've all been watching it happen for years and years and years. And when Dr. Stephen Greer came out, as he was given this information to give to presidents and other people to bring this disclosure forward, immediately he started getting discredited. Now, it's not like the American government is going to come right out and say, hi, I'm the American government and I'm really insecure, so I'm going to discredit this person because that's super obvious. No, they'll do things like plant somebody in a chat room to swear they were best friends with, say, Dr. Greer in high school, and they'll make up some fictitious story that, say, Dr. Greer, ate his own toenail fungus and spun in a circle and howled at the moon and had mental problems and he can't be trusted. I mean, they just smear people out the window to really get people's focus off of the people who are trying to bring UAP disclosure forward. Now, I've talked a lot about UAP disclosure. I've talked a lot about dealing with off-worlders. I've talked a lot about UAP design, craft design. I have blogged about it, but I don't count because I'm just a weird-ass psychic up in Montana. They think I'm weird anyway. They don't think, not one person is going to take me seriously. They're thinking to themselves, that crackpot, forget it. Nobody's going to listen to her. She's got hair like a Muppet from 1996. It's not happening. Nobody's listening to her. So, I kind of went about laying out the way that I disseminate information quite purposefully this way. Because the one thing you can do, if you literally want the government off your butt in this regard, I'm not an anti-government person, actually, believe it or not, but if you don't want the government up your keister about what you're talking about when you're talking about aliens and alien technology and UAPs and UFOs and propulsion devices and all the different races that work with all of our different world governments, if you want them off your butt, all you have to do is come out and say, I'm a psychic who translate angels. Because they immediately will put me in a pile of cray-cray people that they believe that no one will take seriously. It's awesome. And I very purposefully did that because they're looking at me going, well, you just discredited yourself. Well, in their mind, I did. And that's perfectly fine with me. But the bottom line here, you guys, is that when we have this quote from a military official, I'm going to read it again. Graves told the panel that the stigma of, making sure that the military people don't come forward with what they've experienced or seen or heard or felt or smelled. This stigma silences pilots who fear professional repercussions, which he said is, quote, compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. It's so important that folks understand that this is so real and so bigger than we are as human beings, which, we're a fairly recent species down here on Earth. This is so much bigger than we are, okay? That the government fears that people will stop trusting the government to protect us from these beings who aren't trying to harm us in the first place. I mean, over time, there's been some interactions with humans and our off-world cousins. It wasn't always so super. But right now, what we're dealing with right now, yeah, no, they're not here to pick a fight. I mean, honestly, really? That's like stepping on an ant and saying, we are the god. I'm stepping on you, ant. Why? These are cultures that are millions of years old compared to humans. So, the government really does fear a loss of faith, that people will lose faith in it to protect them from these highly advanced species, and actually I shouldn't say species, again, that's so racist, highly advanced beings who outpace us in every single technological forefront, and even sometimes biological as well. So, of course, they're going to discredit anybody that might bring validity to ufology, to the study of UAPs, to any of it. They're going to try to discredit folks. So I just figured I'd beat them to the punch and make myself sound like the biggest loon ever. And of course, their little crosshair, I did not fit their algorithm. Their AI ignores me completely. It's actually very blissful. Last time I got checked up on by the federal government, I was writing, at least that I was aware of, okay? I was writing a blog about propulsion systems from off-world craft because I'm very, very interested in physics. I'm interested in astrophysics. I'm interested in propulsion. I'm interested in quantum physics, how these craft travel. It's very, very interesting when you sit and you talk with our off-world pals about it. And I'm such a science geek, right? I love all the weirdo details. So I wrote this blog all about how these UAPs manage to putt across dimensional space. And I was including little diagrams and all kinds of things. Now, this was back in the day. My blog is hosted on WordPress. And this was back in the day, I think 2011 or 2010 or right around there, maybe 2012. And it was back in the day when WordPress would allow you to look at the URL of a visitor. So say you surfed into my blog from Hawaii. Back then, I could look in and see there was somebody who came from an IP that came in from Hawaii. Well, ironically, WordPress doesn't let you view that anymore. Probably not without a subpoena. However, back in the day, I started noticing all of these weird URLs coming in on my UFO posts, especially the ones that talked about propulsion and put diagrams up. And they were coming in from the military base in Guam, the Navy Guam base. And my blog got hit, that one particular post, about 12 different times from different, and one came from somewhere in the mid-Pacific, like it was a ship, I guess. I couldn't really figure that one out. That was weird. But they were all military. And fairly shortly after that, I think it was about 6 or 8 months later, you no longer could see the URLs of visitors coming into your blog. The reason I'm talking about all this is not that I'm some great big fixture in the UAP community. I mean, I'm not really. There aren't that many women that are allowed a voice, first of all, in the UAP community. It's still very, very male-driven and a lot of science heads. And plus, I work as an angel translator. So a lot of times the UAP community is having a hard enough time without having a psychic talk about, hey, guess what? I talked to the aliens. Well, I did, but I don't think I'm helping their case. You see what I'm saying here? And I understand that. Back in the 2000s, my gosh, was it 2012? I was very graciously voted most noted ufologist by a magazine that covered all this stuff back then. But since then, that community has really taken a hard turn off of doing much work with folks who do what I do. And I get it. I mean, you can't even sit in front of the Congress and tell them that you're a former intelligence official and tell them that you have seen disturbing things that you and your wife have both witnessed. You can't even be a former military pilot saying, guess what? We're pressured not to talk about this stuff because if we do talk about it, we'll be discredited by the government that we serve in the military. Wow, I kind of understand why our UAP community, though I deal with a ton of folks still in the UFO community, a lot of them. And I've had a few of them ask me very specifically and say, Danielle, would you please not bring my name up? And it's not that I don't think your work is incredibly important, and it is, and I'm going to run a bunch of stuff by you. But please do not bring up the fact that I've talked to you because it's unfortunately, even though I love your work and I think you're brilliant, and they always say beautiful things, they will say, if I'm seen talking to a psychic who claims that they have regular communication with non-human and NHIs, non-human intelligence, no one will ever talk to me again. And so I get that. So kind of the route I chose to take, making sure that I didn't end up with a weirdo target on my back from, of course, the folks in our government that want to probably do what they think is right. They probably think it's right to not startle people or scare them without, authorization, talking about UAPs and whatnot. I don't think it's right to discredit people. I think that's a bit far for our government to stretch, but it's no secret that they do it. And now we have it on record in a congressional hearing. So why am I going back in time? Because I'll tell you why. Really what ended up happening is that the lawmakers all said that they hoped that hearing back in July could help ease some of these pilots' fears of speaking out. And one of the folks said, this hearing will not be the end of this discussion, but a new chapter and start. We should encourage more reporting and more study of UAPs. The more we understand, the safer we are. So that kind of sets me up for the second half of this podcast, which really picks up, I love this, the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, you guys, that was basically an amendment that would force government agencies to hand over any, documentation or records on UAPs pretty much within 300 days of those documents being filed, and would mandate the disclosure of those records, right, to the public, obviously unless there was some security or compelling reason to keep them classified. And it was actually passed as a larger National Defense Authorization Act. It was part of that. And that was supposed to go into effect here in 2024, okay? So right after that, they got busy, they drafted up something, and they put it up, and they teed it up, and they whacked it out there. And so just to recap, the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, okay, was passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act for 2024. But the UAP Disclosure Act was obviously passed in 23, okay? And what it does is it sets up a timeline and a modality and process in order to deal with all these reports of unidentified aerial phenomenon. And so the act basically sets up a modality or a process for disclosing all this information on UFOs and making sure that, any recovered technology that anybody would find happens to get turned over to the government. So this is kind of a weird little flipsy-servicey thing, because this pretty much means that if a UFO lands in your backyard and an alien comes out and specifically gives you a, welcome to my ship crystal or something, I don't know, and you have that crystal and the government finds out about it, then that piece of material that off-world cousin may have given to you as a gift basically means that it now belongs to the United States government. And so that's what this did. It ensured any recovered technology would belong to the government. So I can't own any UFO stuff. You can't. We can find it. We can study it. We can think it's awesome. But ultimately, if the federal government finds out about it, they can confiscate it. Okay? So I thought that was really weird. But okay, we're dealing with an inexact science and very paranoid people in power in Washington, D.C., who really do want to keep all the power. So, okay, fine. At least we passed some sort of act in 23 and in 24. We just got to turn over our UFO stuff to the government. And hopefully they'll talk about it rather than just sitting on it. And according to the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, they have 300 days to say, I got this crystal from Danielle that the aliens gave her, and now I have to tell everybody that there's an alien crystal that was given to Danielle Egnew in Montana. Supposedly, that's what this is setting up, okay? And the interesting point about the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 is that it is full of caveats, you guys. At least we have it. And at least it got, sucked into the National Defense Act for 2024 However, it is full of caveats. The first one being, of course, hey, you can take my stuff that the alien gave me and now it belongs to the government, and you have 300 days to tell people you have it, unless the following caveats are applied. Unless the government agencies that had 300 days to turn over any information on UFOs decide that some of these records can be kept secret. That's right. And how can any records be kept secret if it's a Disclosure Act? Well, the president is allowed to postpone disclosure of independent records or certain records if disclosure poses some kind of a national security risk, like, if somebody's a special agent somewhere or undercover operatives in different countries. This legislation requires postponed records to be reviewed periodically to see if it is safe to declassify them. So basically, they can decide that they're classified for any number of reasons. Maybe it's too sensitive. Maybe we're on the verge of a war with some other country. Maybe it might compromise legitimately undercover agents in different countries, But pretty much they can postpone the records indefinitely, and they have to be reviewed periodically to see if it's safe to declassify them. But, if it's not, they'll just keep postponing them. And postponed records will also need to have an unclassified written reason for the postponement that is publicly available. So if you've got a classified reason that you can't talk about, you're postponing a disclosure for, you've got to come up with an unclassified version of the classified thing to discuss why you are withholding the information that you told the American public that you would disclose within 300 days. Welcome to the American government. Is that not nuts? So, for example, stating a record contains, say, the names of those working in intelligence who may be harmed if their identities were to become known. I mean, that's a pretty obvious risk that we don't want to endanger people's lives. But I mean, do you see the loopholes here? There's so many loopholes. And then there's really kind of no repercussion in this UAP Disclosure Act or in the National Defense Act of 2024. There's no caveat if a government agency just doesn't want to turn the records over. Okay? So what if a government agency, I don't know, NASA or I don't know. My brain is going dead with all of this very confusing red tape garble here. But what if they decided they didn't want to turn it over, even though it was in the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023? What are the repercussions for a government agency that refuses to turn over records? They pull a Donald Trump. They say, these are my records. I'm sticking them in my bathroom. You cannot have them. Go away. Well, are you ready for this? Here is the plan if a government agency refuses to turn over the records. It's unclear how the legislation would compel a government agency to disclose records that have been deliberately kept from Congress. I'll read that again. It is unclear how the legislation would compel a government agency to disclose records that have been deliberately kept from Congress. So pretty much you got to turn over your UFO stuff to the government. And now it's their property. And then they can sit on it forever if they determine that there is some sort of a security hazard or a hazard that would be dangerous to the public, but they don't have to really tell you what it is. But if they sort of tell you what it is, they have to do it in an unclassified way. And if you're a government agency sitting on this information that you need to turn over, there's really nothing they can do to make you turn it over. So yes, we do have the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. At least we're trying. At least we're going in the right direction. But the folks who don't want this stuff out there, you guys, they've got 555 loopholes, even in the best attempts at trying to educate people on our off-world cousins. It's literally ridiculous. So then let's add one more layer of red tape to this, okay? What is the UAP Records Review Board? Because, I mean, it's got to go to a review board, right? To decide what to do, to decide if we've got to have them sit on it for 300 days or decide it's classified and significantly place out some unclassified way to describe the classified thing we're not supposed to know about that the government agency who isn't going to release it and isn't going to have anything done to them for not releasing it still has. God, a lot's gone on with my little alien crystal. They got taken away from me in my backyard. Look at this. So what is the UAP Records Review Board? What is it? Well, agencies, government agencies. Well, agencies have 300 days to gather and turn over information. President, whoever is the president at the time, so we'll say Joe Biden, has 90 days from when the act goes into effect to form an independent review board. So 90 days, and then after that, there's 300 days, and after that, we may never see the light of it anyway if it's classified. And here, this gets hysterical. This review board, you guys, the UAP review board is going to look at my little crystal that they took away from me in my backyard here. Remember, we're still following the crystal's journey, just like, I need a Schoolhouse Rock song for this. Like, I'm just a bill, yes, I'm only a bill, and I'm living here on Capitol Hill. We need I'm UAP information and I'm suppressed under the boot of some guy really, really insecure. It's got to be something like that. Anyway, back to the board, the review board. It's a 9-member board and it cannot include anyone connected to existing UAP research or programs. So it can't be anybody who knows anything about UAP research or UFO research or programs. Has to be somebody totally not in the know, and has to include at least one national security officer, a foreign service official, a scientist or engineer, an economist, a professional historian, and a sociologist. Excuse me, where's the psychic medium on this? Who is going to talk to the folks? I feel really marginalized right now. So, okay. Think about this. The 9-member board cannot include anyone connected to existing UFO research programs, okay? But has to include one national security person who's not related to UFO programs, a foreign office, a security officer, national security officer, a foreign service official, a scientist who has nothing to do with UAP research, or an engineer that has nothing to do with UFOs, economist, a professional historian that really has nothing to do with UAP research or programs, and a sociologist, which has nothing to do with UAP research or programs. So pretty much you got 9 people that are making up, I guess, a cast of some sort of disaster movie, right? Is that not the cast of a disaster movie? I'm going to write a screenplay out of this, you guys. That's it. I'm writing a screenplay. But we have the cast. Let's cast these people. Who is in our 9-member board? Okay, so the National Security Officer. I'm going to cast Liam Neeson as the National Security Officer. We can't mess around with any of this. None of this is funny. I mean, can you see it? I can see it right now. Okay, so let's get to the Foreign Service Official. Oh, Gal Gadot. Gal Gadot is definitely the Foreign Service official, and she's all upset and up in arms because there's all of this global evidence of UFOs influencing architecture and civilization all over the world, right? So yes, Gal Gadot, you get to be the Foreign Service official right there. Scientist or engineer, oh my God, definitely Robert Downey Jr. We are going to blow the whole entire budget on Robert Downey Jr. as the scientist or engineer. That would be great, yes. Economist. Who are we going to do? Oh, Wrenn Schmidt, you guys. She plays Margot Madison on For All Mankind. She's a tremendous actress. And she can just be wry and talk about all the nerdy economy things. Professional historian. Who are we going to go? Oh, Morgan Freeman. Absolutely. He can have his little stingers, his one-line stingers, Well, we'll see if history repeats itself. It'll be great. Morgan Freeman as the professional historian. And Oh, definitely. As the sociologist, we're going to have weird Tilda Swindon. Weird Tilda Swindon. God, I love her. She's so weird. And she can be in there and she can be talking about the Ice Queen thing she does, you know? The worst thing we can do is treat people like they don't understand that we may have come from somewhere else. Deadpan expression. Staring into space. Does Tilda Swindon actually have eyelids? We don't know. I mean, come on! Would that be the best cast? Okay. All right, I'll get back on topic. I will stop playing Cast My Disaster movie, whose plot line was laid out by the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Anyway, you have to have this 9-member board, and nobody can have any professional affiliation or research knowledge of UFOs on the board, of course. And so once agencies have turned all their information over to this board that's not supposed to know anything about anything, the review board has 180 days to investigate and must publish its findings within 14 days after the investigation concludes. So, again, we have a lot of time that goes by here. And yes, we do need to have time to properly vet information because you got to remember at the very top of this story, I got my crystal taken away that my off-world cousin landed in my backyard and gave me the alien crystal. And somebody reported me and the United States government had eminent domain and took away my crystal. And it's been in this big, giant till of red tape ever since. But at least it got to meet Morgan Freeman. That's all I'm saying. So the thing that really gets me about this is really, besides the endless amounts of red tape and besides the ridiculous time allotments and besides the 5,000 loopholes that say, well, it could be classified, but we have to talk about it like it's not classified, but we're not really going to say what classified is, etc. and so on. I will not recap that again. That's a mess. In spite of all of this, the thing that actually weirds me out the most about this is the eminent domain portion of the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. It's weird. The act establishes the eminent domain over any technology of unknown origin or biological remains from non-human intelligence. So what, the United States government now owns every off-world thing on the earth if it lands in the United States? Apparently, thanks to this act, which I think is really bizarre, okay? Eminent domain allows the government to take over private property for the public good. In other words, if aliens land in your backyard, you don't get to keep them or their flying saucer or my crystal. What happened to my crystal? Okay, so who sponsored this legislation? So far this just sounds like a giant dumpster fire wrapped in a crap sandwich, rolled up in a secret classified document locked away for 300 days that 9 people who aren't supposed to know anything about any of this are never actually going to agree upon seeing. And if they do, they have 180 days to disclose and 14 days to poop that out and say, this is what we think. So what I think is so interesting is that this is a bipartisan sponsored piece of legislation, you guys. And it was sponsored by Senator Chuck Schumer. He's the Democrat from New York. And Mike Rounds, who is the Republican from South Dakota. And they really just came together to bring more transparency to all of this process. And honestly, here I'm making fun of this UAP Disclosure Act, and we actually have one. So, boy, armchair quarterback much, Danielle Egnew? Wow! But come on. It's low-hanging fruit. It's the government. There's so much red tape there that, it's so red. I think we're in Russia. There's so much red tape. That's just crazy. So honestly, they tried as hard as they could with this. And the bill is actually modeled, you guys, after efforts to declassify records regarding the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. So there was a model for this. It's just that by the time you're eminent domaining everything, by the time the government comes in and takes it and decides there's some reason they can't tell us about it, we're back in the same darn boat. And the eminent domain thing is really creepy to me. If something's on your private property, it should be your private property. Of course, that doesn't apply to mineral rights. You could own the land, but not the oil under the land. That could belong to somebody entirely different. So in the United States, we love to divide up ownership as long as you don't get any. That's the way it goes. But we think we are full of all kinds of freedoms and things here. And we are, compared to other countries on the earth. And I am not anti-American. I'm not a conspiracist. I'm not any of it. This is just ridiculous, you guys. Oh, my God. So what else? What else is our government doing about UAPs and UFOs, you guys? You know, Congress is pushing for more disclosure on UFOs. And NASA, my favorite, NASA, I love NASA. Wish I worked for them. Hey, NASA, you want to hire a psychic who does a podcast about UFOs? Come on. Come on. NASA also announced a new role in their agency, which is called Director of UAP Research. That's the other job I want. Oh. And it was created to investigate, obviously, the unexplained phenomena, obviously in hopes of moving past the subject of stigma to science, because NASA is our government science branch that's as mainstreamed as you can get. It's just awesome. And I still love NASA. I know there's a lot of critics of NASA, but I love NASA. And the Pentagon has also launched a new website to collect civilian reports of UFOs. Now, I have not been able to find that URL yet, you guys. I have not been able to. So if anybody finds the URL to the Pentagon, put your civilian report for UFOs right here section, let me know. Because I've got so many things to upload. They're going to be like, oh God, it's the psychic in Montana with her town and country parking lot shot of the ISS. Here she is. It wasn't the space station, you guys. God. So this just gives you an idea of how complicated this gets when you're dealing with people who want to maintain authority and power and dominion and security. I mean, there are security issues here, for real. There's people in the United States that don't even believe the UFOs are real, you guys. They think they're demons. You hear these reports of people standing outside of news agencies, like a local news station that might be interviewing somebody who saw a UAP or a UFO. And outside, you got the religious folks with their John 3:16 signs, and the end is coming, and pray to Jesus, and these are demons. And so, I mean, I can understand that the federal government does have a responsibility to not throw gasoline on a fire, but honestly, people need to figure out we're not the only beings that are in the universe, period. That's just so narcissistic and weird. It's so weird. So today, you guys, today is November 29th, 2023, and today in Newsweek, which is one of the reasons I waited to do this podcast today, because I knew this was coming out. In Newsweek today, here is the article, Is Congress Suppressing UAP Disclosures? What to Know. And it says, a growing number of politicians and commentators have alleged that several Republican congressmen are plotting to stymie the investigation and release of secret government knowledge about unidentified anomalous phenomenon, or UAPs. I've heard unidentified anomalous phenomenon and unidentified aerial phenomenon, so either one will work. In the past year, Congress has spoken to former U.S. military personnel about these UAPs, and basically they go on to recap everything we just talked about here, and they talk about Chuck Schumer tackling the amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act with the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. We talked about that, and basically they recapped everything. Yet there's supposedly some Republican legislators that want to stymie this. I mean, did the Republican legislators read all the loopholes? It's already stymied. Are you kidding? But it says whose names are behind the alleged plot. This is in Newsweek. According to multiple accounts, Republican representatives are now trying to thwart these efforts or restrict the amendment's scope. How can you restrict the amendment's scope? It's already restricted. They're already taking my crystal away. What the hell? I mean, how can you restrict that? Apparently, Alabama Republican Representative Mike Rogers and Ohio Republican Representative Mike Turner are alleged by some to be leading efforts to strike down the amendment's powers. Now, do you see why I spent this whole time in this podcast explaining to you the lack of power the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 actually has? Because, we don't need to go into anymore that there are some folks trying to shut down this act, okay? I mean, they're saying that Mitch McConnell, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, might be in the group that we're going to try to shut down this legislation. I mean, here's the whole point of that, okay? You guys, obviously, we are not alone in the universe. We have so many off-world beings that come and go from our planet on a daily basis. A lot of them come through the oceans. They come through mountains. They come through underground spaces. They come through the center of the earth, actually. They come through the center of the sun. They are dimensional and temporal travelers. They are not restricted by our physics. And that's important to hear. And I believe very strongly this is one of the reasons why our federal government has gone through such efforts to make sure that nobody comes in contact with them. There are some people out there who might consider these beings to be gods of sorts because of what they can do. I'm in regular communication with these beings. They are not gods. They are fallible. They can die. They have termination points to their existence. But you guys, when you look at the deep, deep fear that those in power have of others recognizing that those in power really don't have any power at all, when you hold up our best, most well-funded military on this little bitty blue planet next to any of our off-world cousins, we look like we are throwing rocks at the hull of a nuclear submarine. I mean, it's so astounding. And when I look psychically and spiritually and intellectually into the psyche of the people that want to suppress this information, it's not about suppressing information from the masses. It's not about us not knowing about UAPs or UFOs. It's not about any of that when I look into it. Do you know what it's about when I look into it? You guys, it's about them still looking like the top of the food chain. We have legislators in the United States government that want to suppress the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 that already suppresses itself with a million loopholes and caveats, as I described. They want to even suppress that because they are so afraid of being seen as just a regular old person down here on planet Earth. And we're all just regular old people, and our off-world cousins are just regular old off-worlders. We all are extraordinary in our own way. All of we races throughout the dimensions and galaxies, not just galaxies, gang. We have off-worlders, we have off-dimensionalers that come and visit our dimension that aren't even from this dimension, you guys. They're not even from this dimension. And we call them aliens and extraterrestrials. So the thing that gets me, gang, is how do we deal with a group of people who are so terrified of not being the top of the food chain and not being perceived as the most powerful, knowledgeable thing on the earth? And a lot of these folks, too, that are trying to suppress the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, a lot of them are heavily sponsored by religious modalities. If you ever watch The Family on Netflix, it's pretty creepy. It's about a big religious organization that backs political figures. And it's very, cloak and dagger, and it's a real thing, and it's actually out there, and it's why we're seeing all of this evangelical strangeness in trying to make its way into our governmental system. So we've got these legislators who happen to be Republicans, who happen to be sponsored. I would bet money, bucks to donuts here, that they are sponsored by the same religious organizations that want to keep quiet any sort of life off planet Earth, because what does that do? That could potentially water down the brand of God, couldn't it? Yes, it could. Because didn't God create Adam and Eve, and everybody came from Adam and Eve, and the whole wide universe came from the Adam and the Eve. So if all of a sudden we prove that there are our off-world cousins out there, which we all know are real, then perhaps maybe we are undercutting the doctrine of this organization that has worked for over 70 years to plant religious operatives in our government for their particular agenda. If all of a sudden, aliens and extraterrestrials are showing up, what does that mean the Bible means? Perhaps God doesn't favor humanity above all things. Perhaps God made other beings. That's right. How do we look at God? God is the central focus of a lot of really bizarre legislation lately. The white Christian Bible God. You start throwing aliens on that, and that really kind of waters down your platform, doesn't it? It waters down your platform. Now, if I were a sociopathic weirdo who wanted to create a God in my own image that also was a sociopath and a dictator and an authoritarian and demanded that people bow down to me or I will send them to hell because I'm apparently a narcissist God as well. I forgot about that part. If I'm going to create this guide and sell it to people, wouldn't it make more sense to embrace the extraterrestrials? And wouldn't it make more sense to get out ahead of that narrative and start the fan fiction that perhaps the ETs are here to take away the righteous people or the unrighteous people? Perhaps the ETs are a sign of the second coming of God. I mean, you could so easily wrap in off-worlders to biblical stuff. I mean, Ezekiel saw a wheel way up in the middle of the air, a wheel inside a wheel covered in eyeballs and winged beings walking next to it. That's no crap. That's in the Bible. So why? It's about power, you guys, and protecting a legacy that was put into place years ago that can't get enough traction because the world is evolving and nobody wants to be put under the boot heel of authoritarian or fascist religious systems. Nobody wants to have Margaret Atwood's book come to life and include, I don't know, The Handmaid's Tale 2, Life on Colony Mars. I mean, really? So here are the bullet points, you guys. We're trying to disclose to the federal government, to the people of the United States, that UAPs are real. A majority of people in the United States already believe UAPs are real. People have their own evidence. We obviously learned today that the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 has a million loopholes in it. We also learned that there's a group of Republican Congress people who are trying to shut that down. And all of those Republican Congress people, I know a few of them do. A few of them have deep evangelical religious backing. I would guess that the rest are paid by those folks through lobbyists to promote the agenda of authoritarian religious beliefs in order to just promote that agenda. So we're suppressing evidence to the American people because of an agenda of a small group of people that are trying to put a religious spin on things. I don't see this going well. Do you? I really do not see how this is going to go well at all for that group of folks. Especially considering the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 is so full of holes that it looks like a Swiss cheese slice. So I'm not really sure what's going to be accomplished by this. But gang, here's what I would tell you. I have many of you writing to me a lot and saying, are we ever going to have UAP disclosure? Are we ever going to have anything come to light? Is the government ever going to say, yes, there are aliens, there are extraterrestrials, there's non-human intelligence out there? Well, maybe not. Because we just went through this huge disclosure process where we had unanimous consensus that was bipartisan from our representatives saying, oh my God, we need this to be transparent. And Republicans and Democrats probably had the best day they've ever had because everybody got along and agreed on something for once. And you know who can't have us agreeing? Extremists. And a lot of this religious extremism that has placed itself in our government that Barry Goldwater talked about, back in the 60s. Barry Goldwater, the Republican, warned his party back in the 60s, you've got to watch out for the preachers trying to infiltrate the party. They are more dangerous than any terrorist. They want to do away with democracy. He had a lot of deep opinions about that, and you can Google that, read about it. So it's interesting, gang. So how can we depend on the federal government? Well, maybe not. But what we can do is keep posting your videos. Keep sharing your stories. Keep putting all of this out there. And if a UFO crashes in your yard, you guys, you better move that sucker around, because according to this new disclosure amendment, they can come get it and lock it down in the basement. Mitch McConnell will stick it in his basement, and his lobby funders will be so pleased that he did that. So, you guys, it's time that we come together, just like our representatives did during this congressional subcommittee hearing. It is important that we come together over the fact that we not only are not the only life in the universe, we not only are not the food chain topper of our galactic cousins, but we do have some incredible gifts and talents that they're very interested in talking to us and sharing with us about. But it's very important we recognize this, you guys, because we can't keep getting disappointed just because the 5 white guys want to stay in power and the rest of the universe is moving on. And that's the point I'm trying to make with this podcast. I am not anti-government. I'm a very patriotic person. I would go work for NASA in a minute. If I wasn't as old as I am, I'd probably join Space Force. That being said, yes, I said Space Force. That being said, I do understand that we all have an obligation as private citizens to just make this a normal conversation around the dinner table. And gang, I can tell you firsthand, we obviously are not the only life in the universe. I talk to these beings all the time. And they think it's tragic that I'm going to just say the 3 or 5 white guys are trying to suppress this information. And it reminds me of that scene in Wizard of Oz at the very end when the big wizard is outed by Toto, who runs around and starts pulling the curtain away. And the wizard says, "Do not pay any attention to the man behind the curtain." Well, we need to pay a lot of attention to the 1 or 2 or 3 guys behind the curtain that are trying to say that the entire rest of the galaxy, universes, and multiverses do not exist. That's weird. So, share this information with folks. Let folks know that our government's trying. There are good people in our government trying on both sides of the aisles, guys. There are good people trying to get this information out to the American people. And we are up against a wall of covert 1960s operatives that are deeply religious and kind of don't want, I think, their God narrative interrupted or something larger than to take America's eyes off of infighting over trans issues and abortion. Because the minute we stop fighting, guys, in this country, we get along great. And when we get along great, we are capable of doing amazing things. And if we do amazing things, we just may surpass the level of authority and power that those that wish they had the authority and power actually have over the whole country. Do you see the problem? So if you're a sociopathic narcissist who fears a loss of control and power, the off-worlder thing is pretty scary. It's pretty scary. If you're just a normal person like you and me hanging out, it's fascinating. And we have so much to learn from our off-world cousins. And they've done so much with architecture. And they have shared with me that human beings have been down here multiple times. Our modern humans have been, and this is what the angels told me too, we've had 3 iterations of us down here. And before that, we had dozens. And we just kept getting killed off and killed off and killed off and killed off. And our modern iteration, we've had about 3. So, we just keep trying to get our footing down here and weirdos keep trying to suppress it. And it's like, again, it's all got to go in my movie. My movie. That's going to be my disaster movie. Starring Liam Neeson, Gal Gadot, Robert Downey Jr., Wrenn, Schmidt, Morgan Freeman, and the weird Tilda Swindon. That's right, folks. Well, guys, I hope this has helped answer some of your questions, and I could go on and on and on and on and on and on about UAPs and UFOs and what's going on and why. And I really try not to get too tangled up in the weeds of our American government's issues and our military issues with UFO disclosure because it just keeps going in a big dang loop that never stops. What's more interesting to me is looking at the firsthand testimonies of people so many people, millions of people like myself and millions of other people who have had firsthand interaction with their off-world cousins who have broken down their propulsion system. I'm just saying, not broken it down like with a hammer in my backyard, so don't come get my fake flying saucer in my yard, American government. But I mean, let's pay attention to the folks putting information out there. And yes, vet people and do your best to look, into stuff. And there's some real wackadoodles out there that are way over the edge on all this UFO stuff. However, gang, most people are just like you and me. They're aware that we are not the only beings in the universe, and they are excited to talk about it. So I will be talking more about this issue as we crest into 2024. But for now, I leave you with the relief that you did not have to sit in that room and try to come up with even one more loophole for the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023. Thanks, everybody. I will see you next podcast.